afternoon. I'd like to call the Sacramento Cable Commission to order, please, and will you please read the roll?
Yee.
Here.
Dickinson. Peters. Collin. Nilo. Slowey.
Here.
Morin. Sheedy. Here. Leary. Natoli. Waters.
Here.
We're short a quorum.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and, first of all, this meeting's being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast live without interruption on Channel 14 today. And webcast live at www.saccounty.net. Today's meeting will be repeated on Saturday, April 11th at noon, April 3rd at 12 o'clock noon, and a VHS copy is available in the libraries. Anybody wanting to address the board, there's speaker slips on the back counter back there. Fill one out and give it to the clerk. And anybody that has pagers or cell phones, please turn them off. Today marks the first full webcast of a Cable Commission meeting. Thanks to the county and their Information Technology Office for webcasting Metro Cable 24/7. Every meeting shown on our local government channel is now simultaneously shown on the World Wide Web. So that's a good job, and thanks so much to the county who put this together and their technology office. So, and with that, I'd like to welcome a new member to our board, my colleague Sandy Sheedy, for the first commission meeting. Thank you. Mr. Nilo's here. Okay, so now we have a quorum. So let's go right into, I'm going to ask Sandy if she'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you read item 1, please?
Yes. Today we do have two agendas we're working off of. We have our regular April 1 agenda, and we have a special meeting. I'm going to read the item off of the regular, which is the channel license grantee commercial use policy. And we have several speakers and staff report, I believe.
Good afternoon, members. Happy April Fool's Day, and I'm going to be leery of the chair today. He's evil.
I will share this that Mr. Natoli is the chair of SETA, and he was absent this morning, and so I was the vice chair, so I took over, and we opened the meeting, and I looked to Mr. Thatch, our counsel, and said, I guess I'm going to have some input, because as the chair, I have a right to adjourn this meeting, and we're adjourned, and everybody's looking. Anyway, it was April Fool at work, so. Okay. So let's go ahead then, Mr. Spasto.
Item 1, staff brought to you when you were approved new licensing or enabling agreements between yourselves, between the commission and the community programming entities. At the time, recommended to you that the commercial use policy, that is any use by your assets, by your resources, those resources primarily being the community channels and the equipment and staffing that you provide through your grants, that policy hadn't been reviewed in almost 20 years. So we established a safety net of reporting in the agreements and discussed the issue broadly with you. You gave staff direction to, as staff heard it, to proceed on a conservative basis to develop a new policy or new policies on commercial use by asking the community programming entities, the grantees, if you will, what they would like to do, and then to vet those proposals with the local broadcasters, that is the Channel 3, 10, 13, et al., as well as with the cable companies. So in the information packet today, there are responses. Well, let me back up. Of the policies proposed, Access Sacramento was the only one with a new policy which seeks to provide 25% of time on one of their channels for commercial use. And I believe they will explain what they intend to do as the speakers here soon.
Thank you.
In response, and you'll see in the packet, you got a response from the general manager of KCRA, KQCA, opposed to the policy. You got a response from the California Association of Broadcasters in a phone call today opposed to the policy. You got a response from Frontier Communications, one of your cable companies, not opposed to the policy with the proviso that it had no impact on their equipment needs. The staff recommendation today is to consider the written responses you've received, to consider any testimony you get today or any presentations, that this is not a formal hearing, and refer the item back to staff with additional guidance. Again, your guidance before was be conservative but proceed. If you have additional thoughts, that's fine, and then we will bring back to you a more formalized policy at your meeting, at your next meeting.
Any questions?
No.
Nothing this time?
We have testimony after that.
We sure do. I'm just going to get to that. We have about 8 speakers. Nick Kalbach, is it? Kalbach? You have 3 minutes apiece, so we'll go ahead and set the timer. Just stand between the 2 mics is fine, and go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Myers and members of the Commission. My name is Nick Kalbach. I am board member at Access Sacramento and the director of a local nonprofit program called the Coral Youth Institute, which provides media and leadership opportunities from students from Grant and Luther Burbank High School. Firstly, today I'd like to thank the staff of the Commission as well as KVIE for clarifying the distinction between commercial messaging and on-air acknowledgments. The programming committee at Access Sacramento currently meets monthly, and that has been one of the topics of discussion. Secondly, there has been a need for extending an additional appreciation for businesses in Sacramento on Channel 17, the Sacramento channel. And we have currently been abiding by the PBS 30-second model of no call to action, as well as, oh, I'm sorry, I'm starting to get a little glitch in the throat there, no call to action, and are currently utilizing the PBS model to upstage our model, so we will be consistent with the PBS model for that. Secondly, as a nonprofit director of a program, these are very trying times. I think we all understand that on many levels. And especially in the world of nonprofit fundraising, it's been very difficult. Currently, Access Sacramento, in partnership with United Way and the Nonprofit Resource Center, are looking at different ways to raise revenue for local nonprofits. In the past on Channel 17, the only times we've had direct appeals for funds have been in times of natural crisis. For hurricane victims in Latin America, for the earthquakes in eastern India, and during September 11th. And in each instance, we found that the community within Sacramento is very generous. When given an opportunity to give, they do give. And the local nonprofits in Sacramento are willing to use Access 17 as a venue, not only to teach the local population within Sacramento about the services that are available within Sacramento, but also to utilize Access Sacramento as a direct appeals for funds venue. We understand that that can be a hairy subject. You don't want a 24/7 marathon on the station. And that's why on the paper that we had just passed around to all of the commission members, Give Them a Hand Sacramento, a weekly program with a collaboration with the United Way, the Nonprofit Resource Center, and the Sacramento Business and Arts Council to identify local nonprofit 501c3 organizations to be highlighted weekly, just in a weekly show. And at the end of that, provide an opportunity for viewers to give, whether that be through the messaging at the end of the program that is educating the community on what they're doing in the community, or on Access Sacramento's website, which would be another option for viewers to give through Access Sacramento. This is still in its project phase, looking at what are the abilities of this, working with United Way and the Nonprofit Resource Center, and how we can utilize that. So I ask for your patience as we do so, and your support as we do so. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Next speaker is Tony Salamanca.
Very well.
Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Tony Salamanca. I'm the chair of the Access Sacramento Board of Directors. Chairman Waters and members of the committee, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. The challenge of cutting our budget by 35% has been painful, although it has been instructive. Today, we are in the process of dramatically increasing our membership fees to those program providers that use channels 17 and 18. Staff has been reduced from 13 full-time to 5. Production facilities are now closed to the public on Friday. Festival of Cinema will be reduced. Programming continues to grow with the addition of daily news programming from Europe and New York. This has been a tough year, and the Access Board of Directors Finance Committee reports new revenues need to be identified or further cuts will need to be made now and in the coming year. Doing business differently, that's what you have suggested as a commission, and that is our focus now. We would like to adopt a business model used by commercial television and radio. Sell airtime to small businesses to raise funding. Our research indicates there's a need for the voice of local businesses on local television. Currently, even the cost of 30-second spots on commercial stations are prohibitive, and the vast majority of small businesses cannot afford it. Long formatting programs of several minutes, half hour, an hour is seldom produced, and because there is no airtime available for them. We propose to limit the hours of business programming to no more than 25% of the channel time. Examples would be to have programs available to tour the local small businesses, for example, local restaurants, golf courses, entrepreneurs that are new in the area, venture capital startup companies. We propose to establish $500 an hour or $300 per half hour to run these programs. And we want to develop a partnership with the local television producers that have private companies here in the Sacramento area. This would not be an augmentation to our staff. With a 35% cut of funding, we're facing the loss of $890 for each business day that we have operated this past year on the grant. By granting permission to include the voices of small local businesses on Channel 17 only, would allow us to seek financial means to continue our low-cost services to your constituents, nonprofit organizations, and permitting us to restore the depleted cash reserves and allow funds to replace the dated access equipment. Please permit the small business community an opportunity to support our efforts. Again, I would like to thank you for the feedback on the proposals that we have generated. The 8% drop in revenues really never materialized, although we did face cuts. The anticipated 8% drop in revenues have gone away. We are requesting that our funding be established back to some degree. I think we all need to take some hit. Everybody is taking that. We think that it'd be appropriate, perhaps, to keep it at a 10% cut, not only for us, but it'd be equal across the board to the grantees. Thank you very much, and if there's any specific questions, our Executive Director, Ron Cooper, is here, and he can answer those questions. I have a handout for both of the items that I talked about.
This is the orange one we just got, or is that different? Just give them to the clerk. She'll pass them out. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, this is...
Next speaker, Steve Johansson, is it?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Steve Johansson. I'm here on behalf of KCRA TV. I was asked by the General Manager of KCRA, Mr. Trzynski, to appear today. Unfortunately, he's out of town and wasn't able to be here, but he asked me to come today and voice to you KCRA's objection to the proposed commercial use policy that you are considering. You already have, I believe, attached to the agenda the letter from Mr. Trzynski, which I believe outlines in detail what KCRA's position, but I wanted to just reiterate that today briefly and indicate that it is our position that both the Cable Act and the Time Warner case, which is cited in that letter, do present some substantial impediments to this commercial use policy, and we do not believe that the applicability of the Time Warner case to the proposed policy is overstated, and in that regard would again like to just voice our opposition to the policy. And if staff or council has any questions, we would be available to discuss the position. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Steve?
Question.
Steve, question.
To clarify.
Yes.
If I understand the request, there are two requests by Access Sacramento. One to do on-air fundraising for themselves, just requesting funds as similarly as KVIE does. And the second is to run what's called the commercial access. I gather, if I understand, you don't have you don't take exception to the first request, you do to the second request.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next speaker, Robert White.
Thank you. I represent a club that's been alive in Sacramento since 1937. It's called the Sacramento Amateur Movie Makers, and we belong to a group of clubs in San Francisco, about 4 of them, and we compete every year, and I'm happy to say that we do a good job of competing with them. Access Sacramento, we've enjoyed a really good partnership with Ron Cooper and his group. We've made a film called Night on the River, which is about homeless. Made another one about families in crisis, about juvenile delinquents. These films have been endorsed by the California National Association of Social Workers and have been distributed around the state to help people understand the plight of these people. We made a cave campfire in the studio of Access. We didn't burn it down because it was an electric. But we've just enjoyed and been benefited so much from their know-how and from their cooperation and from the use of their equipment, and especially their technology. When we filmed Night on the River, one of their staff got down on his knees, and there was 4 people around the fire. He put the camera up to their faces and then went around and got a shot from the other direction. And our camera people learned so much from this that we made a tremendous film out of that. It's 15 minutes long, and you'd certainly be welcome to see it. I understand there's some money that Comcast has, and we hope that a portion of this goes to Access. And I'm just here to say that as a club that's been around for so long in Sacramento, we really appreciate working with them. We appreciate their support and interest and caring. And I don't think we would have made either film without their help. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Robert. Next speaker, Gary Tomsick. Gary.
Good afternoon, Chairman Waters and Commission, our commissioners. We're going to show a quick little video to be illustrative of the kind of thing that we're talking about. Ron Cooper, I've known for, how long, Ron? 30 years? 112 years. Quite a while. So this, he saw this, and I said, this is probably more akin to what you're looking at, and we're going to do that. I just want to give you a little background on me. I'm the Director of Film and Video Operations at Bill Ray Studios here in Sacramento. I'm also a part-time engineer at Channel 3, which I'm very proud of, but I'm not here in any official capacity with them. I'm also the Director of Photography of a national television series that's on the air right now on Learning Channel called Spy Master USA, and I'll promote that. And with that, I think I'll let this little piece speak for itself. Go ahead and roll it, guys.
Most of the items that we have here are things that we hand carry back from Belgium.
We've spent a lot of time in Asia, and we have quite a few Indian and Chinese and Japanese antiques.
What I have particularly is 50 years of collectible fashion jewelry.
All of the items in the shop are higher quality, but they are affordable for people with discerning tastes.
Come with us now for an interesting walk through the Antique Promenade, Sacramento's newest and best collective of antiques, arts, and accents. Selected dealers are here to show you their wares and share their knowledge.
Well, what I've tried to do is put together a collection of unusual things from all over the world. There's some French, and there's some Italian, there's English, Chinese. One of the most unusual Chinese pieces I have is that screen over there, which is about 125 years old. It's 20 feet long, and it's a scene of the Forbidden City in Beijing. The two vases are French. They're scenes of Napoleon, and the thing that's unusual about them is the scale. They're extremely large for that kind of porcelain. They're sitting on some very unusual Bombay cabinets that are our reproductions, but they're older reproductions. And
And I'll just wrap up by saying what we're talking about here is unusual programming that really doesn't fit the normal broadcast model. And this business, of course, doesn't even exist anymore. But it's the kind of thing that is very localized. It's ideal for cable distribution and at a price point that the local merchants, people have run a small business, as I know some of you do, could appreciate. So I'm going to count myself right down to the very last second and be exactly 3 minutes on the dot. Thank you.
Question.
Yes, sir.
The length of these is expected to be how long? Like this one?
Informally, Ron and I talked. We thought, somewhere at a minimum of 10 or 15 minutes and up to a maximum of a half hour, depending on the nature of the service or the product.
So that would assist small businesses that can't afford to and have no reason to go out.
Well, and also small business that doesn't want to talk to Stockton and Modesto.
That's what I'm saying. They don't want the ones that don't want to go out of the area, right, as you get when you get any of the
precisely
the big stations here in town. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
One more question.
Yes,
when you say small business, are there businesses that will not be eligible to utilize this medium?
I'm really kind of here to illustrate a technical element. I'm not really sure that what Ron is thinking in terms of setting, high and low benchmarks for qualifying businesses. But I think we're really looking at a pretty diverse, range of businesses that are small enough that they're not the Roseville Auto Mall. They're going to be something smaller than that.
What if the Roseville Auto Mall wanted to?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, why don't you wait, Ron, until after, and we can wrap this whole.
From a technical standpoint, it wouldn't make a lot of difference to an independent producer. We would make the program, and we often do for other applications. But this would be a little bit different of it would be a soft sell, like this thing was. This was just telling people about the antiques that week in that store.
Okay. All right, thanks, guys. So if you do that, Ron, when we're all done, you can wrap up any questions that are unanswered, like Mr. Nilo's. Okay, Gary Martin. Welcome, Gary.
Good afternoon. I also have a share with you. My name is Gary Martin. I'm the communications media chair at Cosumnes River College. That means I teach television production. And we have a long partnership with between Cosumnes River College and Access Sacramento. We do a lot of our student programming that airs on the channel. It involves game shows, news magazines, student films, that type of thing. But a big part of our partnership with Access Sacramento also includes the use of their remote production truck that allows us to go out into the community and share community events through the student crew with the viewers of Access Sacramento. Those programs include a lot of non-traditional types of programs that most of the local stations do not have the opportunity to show in their entirety, and if at all, sometimes maybe 15 or 20 seconds before the weather on a traditional newscast. For example, we will show full-length sports events, basketball games, women's softball. We're doing a Sacramento Sirens professional football game this year. We've done the Pig Bowl, a variety of different types of events that certainly would not get full-time coverage on the local stations. The Western Festival Parade, Sheldon High School Performing Arts concerts, middle school conferences, all sorts of different events that would simply never make television in the absence of the Access truck and its partnership with Cosumnes River College. The model that we are sharing with you certainly serves what I believe to be a voice that is not being heard, and commercialization, I believe, is a viable option for the Access Sacramento channel. It would broaden the scope of community access and not restrict it. The ability to go out and cover community events under the underwriting model really doesn't work. Underwriting community events for television is seen as a gift by those people who underwrite. If we're able to move more to a commercialization, a call to action type of a model, it will increase the number of programs that end up on the channel. Those folks who are willing to, under the guise of sponsorship, be able to sponsor sporting events, the Western Festival Parade, business openings, you know, the 3-day car show at the Elk Grove Mall, have all of those dealers come together to show an event. There's lots of models that are more commercial in nature that for us educationally would be very powerful for the students in creating community events and broadcasting those, but also would make it much more viable because it is expensive and it takes money to a degree to take that truck out and to feed a crew of people that are going to be out there for 8 hours or more a day. The commercial model, I think, really does work. And again, this revenue would not take away from, I think, any commercial venture that someone really wants to do. If they're advertising on a local station, they can afford to do that. The model would not necessarily be real profit generating, but instead would be cost covering and would make that model very viable, I think, for the community. So I encourage you to move in that direction.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next speaker, Kenneth Knoll.
Chairman Waters, members of the commission, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Kenneth Knoll. My company is Southwest Communication Services. We've been in business since 1982, and we produce media. Over the years, technology has changed, and the way you produce media has changed. The affordability to produce content has become very affordable, and small businesses and medium-sized businesses have become and have always been our clients, where we're able to produce short videos that they're able to use in sales presentations, be able to use for showing to investors, for showing to potential clients, and also for good faith and public relations. Our company, my company, is located out at McClellan at the McClellan Technology Incubator, and we've always had a problem in delivery of these content to a larger audience. And this program will allow, or this proposal will allow us to repurpose content so we can distribute it to a larger audience. The channel position and the ability to do that would increase the opportunities for small businesses and medium-sized businesses. You know, the economy, state economy, and businesses are facing, they're looking for innovative ways to do things and market to new potential clients. We're looking, we deliver streaming media out of the technology incubator, and this would just give us another opportunity. We produce DVDs for our clients so that they can take to conferences. We produce presentations, and this would give the small business and medium businesses another opportunity. I've been in Sacramento since 1977, and back then local television stations were local television stations. They're no longer owned locally. It's very difficult, even if you wanted to get time, to purchase time. The idea of being able to showcase our local businesses at prime time is very, very exciting. If Channel 3 would be willing to do that for the cost, I'm sure they'd have many, many clients, but it's not cost effective for them. They're dealing with a whole different business model and application. I was also around during the cable franchising, when cable franchising was happening, and I saw the letter and the citing of the case, and it's apples and oranges. Number one, media market asking to put on a 24-hour news channel that could be potentially worth, $20, $30 million. That's not an equal comparison. The other thing is as they addressed it, indeed it is precisely because of much of the PEG programs has a limited, often specialized audience whose needs are not otherwise met. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about small businesses whose meets the criteria for PEG programming. They cannot afford, or they do not have access to media on a broad basis. And so I ask that the commission, support the proposal by PEG. And if you have any questions, the clock started a little later. It was a delay, so I'll respect the 30 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, Kenneth, thank you. Next speaker is Cheryl Leff, is it?
Yes.
Welcome, Cheryl.
My name is Cheryl Leff. I come to you as a member of the general public. I have used Access's classes and equipment from time to time to make public service announcements and do other community-oriented presentations. I'm also a Comcast cable subscriber, so I am your target audience in many ways, your constituency. My fundamental concern is to see to it that the public's right to have public access television like this, especially that represented by the Community Channel 17, to see to it that this is protected and that this continues to remain available to the public. It seems to me that the fundamental issue here underlying this agenda item is the issue of how do we continue to pay for and support this public access and the programming that goes along with it. The two proposals that are contained in Agenda 1, the first one continuing to do or adding fundraising for nonprofits, I'm wholeheartedly in support of that as a member of a number of nonprofit organizations, including being a docent of Sutter's Fort. I think this is a very valuable community service. The second part of this proposal to go to up to 25% of commercial programming, I hate to see that happen. I feel like that's a kind of desperate last-ditch attempt to continue funding public access. I sat in this room last year and listened to all of the arguments that were made in favor of keeping Access Sacramento's funding at a higher level, and I heard the gentleman who had a long history of doing auditing of cable companies make the suggestion to this commission that you should look a little closer into what the cable companies' real subscriptions amounted to. I see now from last Friday's B that indeed there were about $800,000 of additional revenues that have since been found, and I suspect that that presentation last year may have been the original goad to get that auditing done. I think out of those $800,000 of funds, once Comcast pays them, that you should seriously consider reconstituting a portion of the funds that were withdrawn from Access Sacramento. Keep it a truly public access station. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Questions of Cheryl? Okay. Next speaker, Ray Tatar. Sorry, can't. Tatter. Thank you, Ray. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Cable Commission, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ray Tatter. I'm Artistic Director of California Stage, which is a small theater on 25th and R Street in downtown Sacramento. I'm also the Media Grants Administrator for the California Arts Council and a grant evaluator for the National Endowment for the Arts. Access Sacramento is a community treasure for the arts community, and California Stage has produced 2 plays with Access Sacramento successfully. Latest is a play called A Single Woman, a powerful new work that we developed about the life of the first woman in Congress. Cable access system, which provides much needed media exposure to small theaters and performance arts companies, from the Dixieland jazz groups to dance at Sacramento State. This is a difficult time for public benefit nonprofit organizations, small performance arts groups in this town. Money and grants are in short supply, and yet there is a continuous need for funding, for support, and exposure. On behalf of the performing arts in Sacramento County, I urge you to support this request from Access Sacramento Board of Directors. Please permit them to fundraise for worthwhile nonprofit organizations on Channel 17. The Give 'em a Hand Sacramento project will be an effective blend of nonprofit marketing and provide performance opportunities for local artists. Congratulations on that successful audit of Comcast. The revenue can be used for worthwhile opportunities. I would recommend the restoration of Access Sacramento's grant to the level prior to their 35% cut. Their efforts to document and present the life and culture in our community and provide valuable training not available anywhere else in this area have been drastically curtailed. 13 full-time staff positions reduced to 5 full-time positions. I know how that feels from the sad events at the California Arts Council, and I ask you, please do not follow that example. The funds that have been newly discovered are great. Support those worthy community-based organizations by fully funding Access Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions? Okay, Ron, would you come up, please, and if there's any questions from the board, I'm sure you can address them. Thank you.
I think Mr. Nilo had a question.
Yes, Roger.
Yeah. Essentially, to whom would you propose to offer the exposure opportunity? Would it be anybody?
Actually, with your staff, we've had some email exchanges about that. The programming committee of the board and the entire board has always designated Channel 17 as the Sacramento channel. The easiest programming to do would be to sell George Foreman grills and gold chains and Ron Popeil. Probably the hardest to do is exactly what we're proposing, and that is working together with the production community to create local business opportunities, because there's a whole local production. It's not just turning on a satellite and coming in. So what we're really asking for is your patience as we develop the model. The general direction, in answer to your question, is if local businesses come to us, and if it falls within this no more than 25%, that the programming committee and the board would give due consideration. The idea of car dealers, I don't think we would rule out, but I think at the same time...
Yes. Let's not talk about car dealers.
Sure.
I didn't bring that up. Somebody else mentioned Roseville Auto Mall.
Sure.
This question is strictly public policy, has nothing to do with my personal interests otherwise.
Yeah, the idea would be that, as has been handled successfully over the years, a programming committee would review and bring recommendations to the board. For example, on the 8-hour block that we routinely schedule 7 days a week from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., what sounds most attractive to businesses would be an opportunity, say, between 8 and 11. If we sold out at those prices, $500 an hour, $1,000 a day, Why did we come up with those prices? We came up with those prices because we have lost $890 a day. So we're not intending to gouge anybody. We are intending to keep the prices low enough so that small business can participate in a way that they can't currently. We think it blends in nicely, the idea of touring businesses blends in nicely with the other programming that we have about Sacramento. It just empowers the business community to work with us rather than separate from us. And we feel, honestly, this is what the implied message of this body has been for the last year. Do business differently. So we're bringing that proposal to your attention.
Yes, Jimmy?
Ron, this 25% of the time slot that you're talking about, is there a certain period during the programming of Channel 17 that you're going to use? What I don't want to see is 25% aggregate. In other words, you throw all your commercials into the prime time and then, you know, and not in the other times.
Well, I mean, just following the rule here, and again, the idea is that we'll be talking with you on an ongoing basis to try and make this all work. The idea, as I was just describing, our normal programming day right now goes from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. So 25% of that would be 2 hours. So 2 of the 8 hours would be open. I have no idea whether it would be gobbled up quickly and every night would be the 2 hours solid. I think it's going to take a while to develop that. But certainly 2 hours intermingled with 6 hours, it's not going to be wall-to-wall commercial messages.
I think the key word there is intermingle.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I don't want to see 2 solid hours of primetime commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're programming after that where it may not be primetime. But what's the situation over at Channel 7? Is it something similar to that, or have you looked into what their policy is over there?
The first item that we're asking about that staff with KVIE's help has clarified is that Channel 7 is the same as KVIE Channel 6 using PBS guidelines as interpreted by KVIE staff. It's no call to action. It's up to 30 seconds long. In the industry, they're called image spots, and they're not considered commercials. So the general tenor has been, that's okay. Doing what the PBS stations and Cable 7 do currently is acceptable. What we're asking in this up to 25% business model is, as been described, literally a tour of businesses. And we just want to all be on the same page here. If you get a call saying, I saw an antique dealer on Channel 17 last night, and they were saying, come on down and buy antiques, yeah, that's why they're on there. And it is a business, and it is asking for people to shop.
Yeah. Ron, my biggest concern is that because you are a public type service, that I don't want to see you competing against the commercial channels, and that's why I was looking toward Channel 7 as sort of a prototype, I guess, or a model, I guess,
right,
where you are not competing.
In our again, the choice that we're making here, and we are being very sensitive to that, and that's why the speakers from the small production business community are here today. The long format programming about local businesses that we're proposing is nowhere available on local broadcast stations, 3, 10, 13, or whatever. And so what we're proposing is not going to take anything away from the way businesses currently use the broadcast stations. It's adding something to smaller businesses and small production companies.
I like to hear that, but how do we write that into our agreement?
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, I would hope and would invite, as the TV stations, who have always been supportive of what we do, as the TV stations understand that we're not about the business of going head to head. That would be suicidal, and we're offering something that they currently literally cannot afford to do.
Harriet, you heard what was said,
I think that's one of the reasons why Rich's recommendation is to take the testimony, to listen, to get feedback from the commission, and then for us to go and try to draft something up that meets the desires of the commission and access.
Good. Thank you, Ron.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Ron? Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
See you back. I see you're signed up for item number 4. We'll see you then. Okay. Are there any other questions? So we're going to refer this back, Mr. Spasto.
With any guidance that you may have. Hopefully have.
I can start here. I guess, and I think this question was asked when this was up before us previously, could you just remind me where we are as far as precedent setting on this? As far as other metropolitan areas that have community access channels, and is this being done, or is it being considered in other places, that sort of stuff?
To the best of my knowledge, we're right on the cutting edge, as we sometimes are in Sacramento. If anybody here knows of a different posture, let's accept it. I did the checking through the usual sources that we have. Many other jurisdictions are watching us to see what we're going to do.
Any others?
Well, in terms of guidance and direction, just from my standpoint, for access to do essentially what KVIE currently does is, I think, a reasonable request. The second part of it, though, I have to say I have considerable concern about. Currently, there are on other commercial stations opportunities for a programming time slot, and I think there have been real estate promotional programs on, I think, Channel 10, if I recall, on Sunday mornings occasionally, where they'll buy a half-hour time, and it's more than just the typical spot. Also, I believe there are packages that can be purchased on the commercial cable system that targets a more narrow audience. I think there's a lot of businesses, not just small businesses, that would be interested in targeting specifically the Sacramento area, not necessarily interested in the wider exposure beyond the Sacramento Metro, with the opportunities to pay less for that more limited exposure. And so what you're trying to get at, I'm not sure that it's safe to say the commercial broadcasters don't try to get at. And I have to say the imprecise definition of the boundaries of the program, if you will, would give me significant pause, even if I didn't have a problem with the concept in the first place, because there's no way of telling to what extent this truly will compete with commercial broadcasters. And so I find that part of the proposal to be just very problematic from my standpoint.
Yes, Sandy. Sorry, Aaron.
I know I'm new here, but I do want to just talk about this subject. I understand that the figures have been cut, the income has been cut, and that there has to be a way to find a replacement. And I know we've said, we're going to cut this, but you have to go find it. And they've come back with some suggestions. I appreciate the suggestions. I'm a little troubled with it, because I feel that public radio, television should be free of commercials. I like the information you gave us on this one. However, I don't know if they're all going to be the same. And I would hate to see us start hawking, as you said, George Foreman, grills on television. I wanted to ask if that can be something that's put into the contracts, or that we work with the other stations with, or the other people that are here, so that we have guidelines.
Yeah, the way the administrative process is structured, if you were to make policy decisions on this issue, they automatically click into the agreements with all of your programming entities. So we set up some policies that you control that are incorporated by reference into the agreements.
So that when Commissioner Yee said that he didn't want to see it all in one spot, that would be in there? Those types of issues is what you're saying?
Right. You would give direction to staff. We would come back next meeting and try and draft it for you and see how close we get to hearing what you're saying in writing.
Well, as a new member, I'm not really prepared to give you direction on how to do that, but I am going to tell you that I am troubled with commercials on public stations. I will keep an open mind and look at this when it comes back to us, however. Okay? That's about as far as I can go today on my first meeting.
We picked up the word trouble.
Okay, thank you.
Roger?
Thanks. Well, there are two aspects to this, obviously. One is legal, and the other is policy. I think the legal question needs to be further defined. I see that, Harriet, you are apparently of the opinion that the KCRA letter overstates the applicability of Time Warner. I don't know if you have further...
We've looked at the Time Warner case many times for many cable franchise agencies. And that case dealt with basically turning the public channel over to Fox News. And so it was about as far pretty much as you could get. There's virtually no law on anything less than turning your access channel over to Fox News. So the issue of whether, so the issue of whether you could show PBS-style commercials, whether you could set aside certain portions of, the day or certain time periods for either traditional commercials or materials that don't have what they call call to action. None of that is defined, in my opinion, by the case law that we have today.
I think it would be helpful to have your analysis, though, in writing of...
I will do that. We have prepared that.
Of the construction, both, not just of case law, but any administrative regulation or opinion that is applicable to the issue, as well as statutory construction that might make sense. I just think that to whatever extent there is definition that creates limits here that we can distill, we would benefit from knowing where you think those limits are. And if the only limits are you can't have Fox News, then fine. I just think we need to have that in front of us. I think that helps to frame the discussion from a legal standpoint.
We can bring that back. We have provided that kind of advice to your staff, so we can bring that back to you at the next meeting.
The second aspect of this is the policy question, and in that regard, I'll just say for my own part that I actually would prefer not to be talking about this issue. I would be much preferable from my perspective if we were just thinking about access in the more traditional manner that we have historically. But I simply don't think we can do that with a straight face. We have capped and then cut access substantially in the last several years, dramatically last year, and as Ms. Sheedy said, we have told them, go out and figure out how to generate more money, be creative to make up the difference. And now they have come back and said, we don't have a number of the same opportunities that some of the other grantees do to generate outside sources of money. Here are some ideas we do have that we think have some saleability to them, and for us to say, sorry, that just doesn't comport with our idea of what access ought to do, is I think an unfair conclusion to come to. And therefore, while I think that it makes perfectly good sense to look at how we might design this in a way that it doesn't defeat the purpose of access in the way that we've thought about it traditionally. I'm certainly open to some formula here that gives access a chance to raise a little bit of money to sustain and enhance their operations. Frankly, I think that Ron is absolutely right on the competition issue. It would be suicide for access to think that they're going to compete with any of the commercial broadcasters. And I would say at the same time, it is unrealistic to think that the Roseville Auto Mall or any other major business concern is going to run over to Access with their vast audience and their great Nielsen ratings and put a huge quantity of advertising dollars on their doorstep. So it's not the issue of competition that I think is a real one here. It's a question of whether, in the first instance, we want to entertain any kind of commercialization of public access offerings, and we obviously are willing to, and have in the past been willing to, walk over that threshold with all the fine art forms that public television uses that are not commercials and yet look an awful lot like them. And the question is, how far are we willing to go? And I'm willing to go somewhat further than I might prefer because of the actions of this commission in the past.
Harriet, I'll be very interested to read your legal opinion on that also. I think that'll be a real help to all of us. I realize, like Roger Dickinson mentioned, that we've put Access through some real budget stress, but they're not the only ones that has gone through budget stress over the past 2 years. And I have struggled with the KVIE model, but I'm also very uncomfortable that this commission would then be put in a position of monitoring which commercials are within the realm of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And I don't know if that's something that could be put together in the form of statute, so every meeting we aren't looking at commercials trying to decide what is acceptable to be on the Access and what isn't. And I'm guessing that most businesses that want to advertise, the cable rates are low enough that they can probably get their own personal access with a small c or small a available there. So I'm really scratching my head trying to figure out how this commission would not be involved in a monthly routine of reviewing commercials and hearing from the commercial stations about a complaint. Well, we didn't like that one and that one went over the line and that kind of thing. So if you could address that, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I would just echo those comments. I do appreciate the fact that we have a proposal before us that's innovative. I don't think we're talking major dollars here to compete with KVIE at $500 an hour or $1,000 a day. I would echo Mr. Yee's comments in terms of 25% being 2 hours, 5 to 1. I would not want to see 2 hours of commercials or presentations for that matter, and the regular programming bumped to the later sessions during the evening. But listening to Susan too, I don't want to be sitting here every month judging on the content of whether it meets the intent or not. So if that comes back, I would be against that. So if you can write it in such a way that it makes sense, I'd certainly be willing to look at it.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments, Mr. Esposito, so you have your marching orders?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll bring it back next meeting or the meeting after. Can you get it back at the next meeting?
We'll try for the next meeting.
Well, that's fine. Okay. Madam Clerk?
On the regular agenda, we have item 2, Comcast 1999-2002 franchise and license fee review.
Okay. Mr. Esposito?
Mr. Chairman, members, I will try and define my comments into 3 categories. I'm going to rely on Harriet for help on at least all 3. First off, a report was issued by your auditor after review by the cable company. I won't get too much into the process, and I'm going to use round numbers rather than exact numbers here, that recommended $800,000 in payments to you as underpayments for cable television franchise fees over the four calendar years ending December 2002. In discussions with Comcast last several weeks, including some just right up to the last few minutes, Comcast has provided a check in round numbers for approximately half of the amount recommended by the auditor. We believe, or the auditor has advised, and we believe, and I think everyone concurs, that the check sitting here represents payment to the...
What is that check for? How much?
This check is for $409,889.
Thank you.
As you will hear from the staff, our auditor and Comcast accountants have fine-tuned this number a little bit. So the actual agreed-upon number is a couple of thousand, $2,800.05 more. But I'm going to try and keep things in round numbers. So we have agreement and payment on the undisputed portion of the audit findings. And at this point, I'm going to set that aside to say that that process has worked and it appears to be resolved. For the disputed portion, one, we find that it is significant. I will generally describe the issue that's there, maybe let Harry go into a little bit more depth and or Comcast, but I'll start with this. Having debated this issue, having discussed this issue, having researched this issue, it's my conclusion that reasonable people, especially those of you who are financial professionals, who view the issue in the context of the franchise documents and generally accepted accounting principles and all the other pieces that go along with it, will have a very difficult, if not impossible, time coming to a decision of who's right in this issue. The issue generally is, does the cable company pay franchise fees to your body for commissions paid to firms who market and sell advertising for them? There'll be a lot of variations, but that's generally the issue, and I'm saying to you that I don't believe you can resolve it today. We have tried. I think it's an agree to disagree. The issue before you, though, or what I put in my staff report last week, is that your ordinance, which has been contractually agreed to, I should say your franchise documents, which have been contractually agreed to in numerous settings and occasions with the cable company, say very directly that a failure to pay franchise fees is a material breach and cause for termination of the franchise. Your language doesn't say anywhere that if the cable company believes that its interpretation of gross revenues, generally accepted accounting principles, or anything else, decides that it doesn't want to pay, it has that option to do so. The process is set up so that if the cable company pays, or my belief is the cable company pays, you can, or let me back up. The process is set up, and Harriet will describe the process, but with the recommendation I've made to you that there has been a failure to pay, the process has three components. A hearing to determine that there has been a failure to pay, and Harriet will describe that in detail. We recommend that be done by an administrative hearing officer, again, because the nature of the issue is such that it's my recommendation, based on the recommendation of council, that it's not something that you as a governing board probably are equipped to handle, both in terms of the content, and no offense to you who are CPAs and lawyers, but both in terms of content and process. It is a judicial process. The hearing officer then makes a recommendation, a finding and recommendation to you as the governing board, and you then can accept, reject, rehear, or order the hearing officer to hear. And under the third step is that in the process, and I'm summarizing these, there are very ample notice provisions and opportunities for starts and stops in this process. Comcast, as your legacy franchisee, has a contractual right to take a decision by you recommending termination of the franchise to arbitration. in making this recommendation to you, somewhere along the way, either in the hearing officer process, by your deliberations, or in the arbitration process, this befuddling issue of whether or not franchise fees are paid on commissions gets resolved. For you to understand this and put it in magnitude, the arrearages currently are approximately $400,000. I've offered and suggested to Comcast that they could put that amount of money in an escrow account, protest the payment, and we would not be in a material breach mode, and we could go essentially hand in hand to an arbitrator, to a decision maker, to adjudicate this issue. That has been rejected. In addition to the $400,000 in current due pursuant to your auditor's finding, and by the way, our auditor's here with us today, our analysis is that on a going forward basis, recognizing that there's 20 years left on your franchise, this decision is right now in current dollars, best guess, about $100,000 a year in revenues to you over the next 20 years as well. The seriousness of that is, I believe that is a material issue, and that at the staff level, I was not comfortable coming to you and saying that the dispute by the cable company was reasonable and we should look away from and disregard $400,000, including interest, that I've been advised by counsel, I believe myself, been advised by our auditor, and in talking to and researching thoroughly with other local government jurisdictions and attorneys, a fee that this entity, this community is entitled to. In conducting my analysis on a probability basis, and we have done this in the past in litigation, I think, and Harriet said, we have probably local governments have a 50-50 chance of prevailing on this issue if it is adjudicated. I cannot find any other jurisdiction in the country where this has been definitively resolved. I know it is being discussed in other places. I believe the issue is significant to Comcast and the entire cable industry, as well as significant to local governments throughout the country. I'll take questions. That's my status summary. I'll take questions, or I'd ask Harriet to brief you in more detail on the process that our recommendation, and I say our recommendation, would start you on. Your pleasure. If you'd like to hear from Harriet.
I'd like to have input from Harriet, then that may beg some questions or answer some questions for us.
Okay. Let me first address the process and then talk a little bit about gross revenues and franchise fees. Under your, you know that you have both a franchise ordinance and a licensing ordinance, and based on the legacy of settlements in the past, those ordinances tend to merge into a set of what we call the franchise documents. Basically, all of your documents provide that the willful failure to pay franchise fees constitutes a material breach of the franchise. The ordinances then go on to provide that the remedy for that is termination. That's not the sole and only remedy, but that is the way the ordinances are drafted so that you go forward into a hearing process. The commission has the ability to first set that first set a hearing to determine if there's a material breach and if the remedy should be termination, to either hear that matter itself or to set that matter to a hearing officer that the commission would determine. The only parameters on the hearing officer is that the hearing officer should be an attorney authorized to practice law in California. Once the hearing officer has heard the matter, that hearing officer would make a written recommendation back to this commission. The commission could then accept the recommendation, modify and accept the recommendation, reject the recommendation, and set a new hearing either before itself or before another hearing officer. Once the commission determines what its position is, when it makes a decision based on the recommendation of the hearing officer, Comcast has the right, through the settlement agreements in the past, to take that matter to arbitration. The arbitration is not a brand new proceeding. It's not, as lawyers call it, de novo. The arbitration is to determine whether the commission's decision was based on substantial evidence and whether the remedy flows from that. So it's more limited, the arbitration is more limited than it would be if you went straight to an arbitration, or a more limited determination than, for example, the hearing officer would conduct. The arbitration decision is final and is enforceable in the courts one way or the other. And so that's sort of the process that all of your ordinances set up. And you would do that. The fees at issue here are both franchise fees and license fees, because as the commission may recall, the franchise area is, one portion of the rights that Comcast has. Comcast also holds several licenses, and those fees are also at issue in this matter. So that's the general process. We have drafted for you, and I don't believe it's been handed out yet because all of this has happened fairly recently, a resolution that you may want to use to set a hearing and to start the process to hiring a hearing officer. That resolution, if you decide to go forward with this, asks that a hearing officer be appointed from the Office of Administrative Hearings that's run by the state of California. That's one alternative for a hearing officer. As I said, the ordinances don't provide you with any particular guidance on how you choose your hearing officer. But that department has established and experienced hearing officers, and we thought that that might be an appropriate way to start moving forward. The resolution also encourages continued discussion on the matter and looks towards several other remedies, which I'll get to in a minute. As the franchisee, Comcast has provided to the commission a security deposit. That security deposit is in addition to the performance bonds and other remedies that the commission has. The security deposit right now with interest is at approximately $190,000. It's one of the remedies that the commission has to cause a draw on that security deposit, which is currently on deposit in the county treasury. And the resolution before you authorizes your executive director to make that draw. It's up to the commission whether or not you want to do that. The resolution also directs your staff to look at the franchises and the licenses for compliance, to start a compliance review and to report back to the commission at your June meeting on any other matters that might be appropriate to report back on with respect to compliance. So that's sort of what the resolution says, and that's the general process for material breach and going forward towards a remedy on material breach. The issue before you has to do with basically with the commissions and fees that are paid to companies that sell advertising on the cable stations. And this is not particularly a new issue. It's not, you are not alone in this issue. I have worked on this issue for several other jurisdictions. Many times, I think what happens with this issue is that it is only one of many disputes that a particular jurisdiction has with the cable company. And in resolving their disputes, they resolve their disputes globally. And so there is, to the best of my knowledge, there is not any definitive ruling on whether or not franchise fees should be paid on commissions. Your ordinance and both your franchise ordinance and your licensing ordinance, like almost without exception every other local government ordinance provides that they pay you 5% on their gross revenues. And the definition of gross revenues is very broad. It was intended to be broad so that you could not exclude revenues by means of entering into specific contractual relations or by means of categorizing a revenue in one way or another and therefore excluding it from the gross revenue definition. The gross revenue definition basically includes all revenue that comes to the cable company directly or indirectly by reason of the operation of the cable system. And right now, jurisdictions in Oregon, Milpitas, have this issue before them. Los Angeles had this issue before it. It is an issue that that many franchising agencies are looking at as they go forward with the audits. In the past, as the Commission, some of the members of the Commission may be aware, there have been other issues on whether or not specific kinds of revenue constitute part of gross revenues. 5-10 years ago, the cable operators alleged that franchise fees were not part of gross revenues, that they could take franchise fees and treat them more like the way we treat sales tax as an add-on as opposed to part of gross revenues. They went forward with that. That went to the courts. The courts said no, gross revenues are all the revenues that come forward by reason of the franchise, and that is a very broad decision. And you read the gross revenues in light of all, it's not inconsistent with accounting rules. It's not inconsistent with any other rules that deal with how different corporations keep their books. But when you look at gross revenues for the purposes of the franchise fee, you are looking at a broad definition. And that's what your auditors were using when they looked at this issue. That's what other jurisdictions have looked at when they look at this issue. And that's why the recommendation is coming forward to you that this is revenue that the cable operator should pay franchise fees on, and that we should go forward to try to collect that revenue from the cable operator.
Yes. Let's just lay out the groundwork here, how we're going to do this. And when we have questions for Harriet now, that's fine. And if it's the will of the board, we can hear from the representative of Comcast next and then ask our questions, or how would you like to do it? That way we'd have, I think if we heard from Comcast, we'd have their side of the story also to then ask questions as we feel. Is that okay?
As you wish.
Fine. So, but for now, if you have any pointed to Harriet, go ahead.
Well, the question I had, I mean, there's a number of questions here, but just on this point, is there a distinction between franchise fees and commissions in that franchise fees are actual revenue that comes in even if it goes out? Commissions, the argument is, never come in. They're not revenue ever realized.
However, the reason that they're like that is because the cable operator entered into an agreement with those people selling the advertisements. That money, at least if not in cash, at least in concept, runs through their books, and and it's accounted for as commissions. It's it's the cost of selling the advertisements. So.
But it's not a cost to them, Harriet. It's a cost to the advertiser.
It's a cost.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out whether you can use the parallel to the franchise fee argument here, or whether it's a different circumstance, and that's what I'm asking.
Well, I think that is the nub of the question. That is exactly what we've been discussing, both with with Comcast and with our auditors, and in looking through this, from a legal standpoint. And, I guess from our point of view at this point, it seems to us that they sell advertising for a certain amount of money. If they want to sell advertising for a certain amount of money, then that's the amount of money that should be part of the franchise fee. That should be accounted for in the franchise fee. If they sell that and then they want to take commissions out of that, then the whole amount is part of the franchise fee. Right? And it doesn't matter how they remit it back and forth, because the actual cost of the moment or a minute or 30 seconds on the cable system costs a certain amount of money. And if they incur costs in order to sell that those are costs, they're not deductible out of gross revenues. We do not deduct any of their other costs out of gross revenues, and so there isn't any reason to deduct these costs out of gross revenues
So
either.
you would take the position then that, or at least that, the extension of that argument, let's say you take the position, the extension of that argument is, if a minute of time costs $100, they charge $100. It doesn't matter that the understanding is that the agency placing the ad gets $15 of that 100. The revenue is $100 to the cable operator. But if the cable operator charges $85 and the advertiser pays the agency $100, out of which the agency takes $15, then the revenue is only $85.
Well, because in one circumstance, the cable system is saying it costs $100, and we'll pay we'll pay you for, helping us sell the advertising. In the other sense, it's an agreement between a third party and their client, and they could agree to pay $15, they could agree to pay $200. It has nothing to do with the cable operator then. But here the cable operator is saying, you sell this for me, and I'll help, and I'll pay you back X amount of money.
So you agree with my distinction then?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Okay.
By this resolution, we are determining that there's a material breach. And then we're hiring a hearing officer to decide whether we're correct in deciding there's a material breach. Right. Do I understand that correctly? So that means, and since the whole thing revolves on this question of the nature of commission fees, I'm not going to use the term revenue because I'll try not to prejudice it, but the whole issue of breach revolves on the character, the legal and accounting character of advertising commissions, correct? Mm-hmm. So that's what the hearing officer is going to decide too.
That's correct.
I'm a little confused by that step then. We make a determination and then we turn it over to somebody else to tell us whether our determination was right or not.
Well, the other alternative is that you would start by making that determination, and then you would hold a hearing to determine whether or not your determination was correct.
And if we did that ourselves, then the next step would be that Comcast could pursue the arbitration route.
That's right.
So all of it's the same, except that there's a hearing officer in between whom we can blame it on. You don't have to respond to that. The point is that the whole thing starts by us making the determination of the breach.
Right, that's correct. And your ordinance sets forth what constitutes a breach.
Right.
And so I think the underlying factual question is, and legal question is exactly that.
The breach is the willing failure, and the willing failure only exists if we determine that commissions are revenue to the cable operator.
Correct.
This really is a form and substance question of the transaction. I don't think anybody denies that the form of the transaction implies that the commissions are revenue to Comcast, but the real issue is the substance of the IRS struggles. Sometimes I think they rule unilaterally based upon which one will make them more money. But that's before the IRS, that's the thing you hear all the time, it's form versus substance. You can make a transaction look any way you want to, but what's really going on? And we're getting a little bit into the next stage of this hearing, but I am posing this as a question, although it's going to sound like I've made a conclusion. the substance of the transaction is really answered, seems to me, tell me if this is off, by asking the question, to whom are the commission fees owed, and by whom are they owed? Does that not answer what the substance of the transaction is, irrespective of the documentation form?
I don't think so.
Why?
Actually.
Mr. Nilo, I'll take a shot just from the layman and out of the accounting and out of the legal thing, but having studied the gross revenue definition, the gross revenues say, in effect, franchise fees are paid on any revenue generated as a result of the existence of the cable system you've authorized.
Regardless of to whom it accrues?
I think the gist of the issue is, do the questions you just posed, the accounting type questions, if you will, of form and substance, supersede the definition, the contractual definition of gross revenue, which is both broad and very specific, or is it the other way? And if you, depending on where you start and what your probably training and background is kind of how you may get there. The gross revenues definition, and Mr. You may remember, but Isla would recall that the gross revenue definition in the settlement agreement in 1989 was slightly revised, but heavily negotiated and in a scheme of a $160 million lawsuit, contractually blessed by the federal court in a good faith settlement, and characterized to this body as capturing the revenue from the gumball machine in the lobby. So I have to bring and suggest that reading that, and I'll say in summary, it says, any revenue attributable to the existence of the cable system in your community, or something like that. So I see that the issue between which one of those drives, rather than within the accounting analysis, form versus substance. I apologize if I'm stepping on expert toes, but
the form versus substance analysis is a combination of accounting and legal, in fact. But that point aside, your definition of revenues upon which franchise fees can be assessed includes any revenues, any money that is generated to anybody in the community by virtue of that system being in place. That's kind of what you just said.
Well,
and I'd want to have, the question I'd have is for council to cite reference to where that is in the settlement agreement or the franchise documents or whatever it is. I'd want to see that specific reference. That's an awfully broad definition, and that means that the cable operator literally has the obligation to pay franchise fees on revenue that they literally would never see, separate and aside from the question of this advertising commission issue.
Well, as we go through this process, I'd be happy to provide you with the definitions of gross revenues. I have them here, but you probably don't want me to read them all.
No, I'd want you to reference the verse.
Right. I think part of the issue that we have here is the way that is a characterization issue, because, again, they're paying on gross revenues. Okay? And so that when they get revenues, if they incur cost, to make those revenues, that cost is not deducted from their revenues.
I understand.
This is just a particular industry where they pay on commission. And I think the issue here is not, who's entitled to the money at the end of the day, because clearly the people who get the commission will get the commission. The question is that commission a cost, in which case it should be part of gross revenues, or is it somehow outside of that cost formula in its entirety, in which case it's not part of gross revenues? You know, and I just don't think at this point, I mean, I think that, other people in my position, other attorneys representing franchising agencies, auditors who are doing the work for franchising agencies have said, we believe this to be revenue, and then you have a cost. That's part of the selling of your advertising. Comcast disagrees with that. And so I think we really come back right down to that same issue again of, which direction are you looking at the revenues and at what point?
For now. Yeah, I realize that. Did you have a question here,
Yes.
Jimmy?
Yeah. I guess my line of questioning is pretty close what Roger was saying. I'd like to see a copy of our contract, that portion of it that delineates gross revenue, and then also a copy of this definition that you said you had somewhere over there. That's fine. But I mean, essentially, what did we do before Comcast took it over back from AT&T?
Well, I think it has, this is the first time I believe that you have had an in-depth audit.
Okay.
So I do not believe that you've specifically addressed this issue head-on in the past. I know that other jurisdictions that I represent have done so and have come to the same crossroads. And again, the entities that I've represented, when come to this crossroads, have actually had many issues involved with the cable operators at that point and have worked through them, but not necessarily this issue in particular where you could draw on it as precedence for how it should go forward.
Yeah. I'm an engineer, not a CPA like Roger is, or an attorney like the other Roger is, and so I got to look at it from a different perspective. But from my perspective, I think I understand the difference between gross and net revenue. I know I had a meeting with a couple of representatives from Comcast, and they mentioned that the fees that they pay out to outside organizations that gets advertising for them, so what they get is a net revenue. I guess they consider that a gross revenue because that's all they get. But on the other hand, they also admitted that they do have in-house people who go out to get contracts, and the revenue coming in for that is gross, and then out of that gross they pay their own employees. So, I can see where this becomes really a definition of what gross income really is, and that's why I'm interested to see what you have over there that try to delineate that difference, or clarify it, I should.
Two quick questions from my end, just so I can understand the timeline here. The audit that was completed by the county was done approximately January 30th. Is that correct?
I can let Alan speak to that, but I believe that the coursework was done approximately January 30th. That's correct.
And at what point in time was Comcast given that information?
Comcast got a draft on March 4th.
March 4th, and we're April 1st. So they've said they disagree. We have a different opinion, but yet they've been in communication with us, correct?
Absolutely.
Back and forth. I guess I find it troubling. 26, 27 days later, here we are looking at a revocation when there hasn't been any attempt not to communicate. What I've heard from our attorney is it's a 50-50 chance one way or the other. I've heard, and again, I'm not trying to post my hand here, but I just find this whole issue troubling that, one, we hear about it on the news before we get a chance to even read about it in a packet. That we can take aside because I do want to follow up on that. But a 50-50, you've been involved in some negotiations, but what I haven't heard is you said there's no definitive way one way or the other on what other jurisdictions have had. So we obviously know there's a difference of opinion. And I just curious how we find ourselves at this point, 27 days after first dropping it on Comcast's lap. Maybe I can get an explanation on that.
A little bit of background will help here.
And I don't want to go into last year. Okay?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I do not want to go into last year. I wasn't here, so I'm going to leave it for where it was. Comcast took over AT&T in 2001, I believe, correct? 2002, okay. So they've come forward at least for the audit from back to 1999 and paid what they feel they owe. I guess there's $2,800 in dispute.
No, not in dispute. It is
Okay, well, and again, $2,800 is a different issue, but they were given something on the 4th of last month, and 27 days later, we're saying they're in, I just find that, the word before was troubling. I think I feel a little stronger than that.
Yes, Roger.
I had a procedural question that I wanted to ask that cropped up as a result of a couple of comments, because I had something of the same thought as Mr. Nilo about this finding of material breach. And I wondered whether under our franchise and other applicable guiding documents and principles, we could find cause to believe there's material breach or something of that variety, as opposed, or do we have to make a finding of material breach in order to initiate the process in the absence of some mutually agreed process?
I think you could probably find cause to believe as well as find material breach.
Okay. Thanks.
Just for clarification, could we take it down to something as simple as a SMUD bill? Comcast takes in X amount of money a year, and they pay SMUD X amount of money for their electricity. Now, are we saying that this is what's happening with the outside agencies, the Ginny Runyon type operations in Sacramento, that if it's $100, an expense to them is to pay her $15? Is that a good analyzation versus SMUD or not? I'm trying to get to this, what is gross?
I believe that that is a good analogy.
Okay. Okay, so it's the will of the board, then we'll hear from Comcast, is that correct? Okay, Karen, would you come down, please, and put your name on the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, my name is Karen Monroe, and I am the Regional Vice President for Government Affairs for Comcast. I would like, if I could, to just respond to a few things that have been said here and then sort of make my plea. Comcast has paid over $30 million during this period of time that is in question. We have remitted a check for the undisputed amount, as you've heard, for almost $410,000. The amount remaining, I know you round up, we round down, is just under $370,000. And here's the issue from our perspective. Any ad sales that goes on internally, our folks that sell ads, we book the entire amount of revenue that they bring in and pay franchise fees on that. There is no deduction of commissions. What we're talking about here are advertising agencies that are totally unaffiliated with Comcast. They are in business to sell advertising. They sell it for cable, they sell it for broadcast, they sell it for newspapers. Someone goes to them and buys an ad, and they buy it for, they pay them $100. They take $15 off the top, they send us $85. We book that $85 and we pay franchise fees on it. We believe that federal law and the Cable Act puts a cap on the amount of franchise fees that LFAs can charge cable operators, and that cap is 5%. If we pay franchise fees on revenues that others earn, then we are paying more than 5% of revenue. It's not a gross versus net issue. It is our gross. What we get from the advertising agency is the gross amount we take in. That is extremely, simplified version of this, but that is, in a nutshell, the issue. I think Mr. Spasto feels that because the language in one document is very broad, that somehow supersedes the federal act. But the federal act makes it very clear that regardless of what a franchise says, all revenue must be related to the provision of cable service in order to be found to be liable for franchise fees. An advertising agency is not providing cable service in any way, shape, or form. They're providing advertising sales service, and they're providing it to clients. And then they, in turn, work with us for placement, just as they do the newspapers and broadcast television. So that's the issue in a nutshell. We, I guess, what I would hope the Commission would see here is that we are in no way shirking our responsibilities in paying our franchise fees. And we do not believe for a second that we're in breach of our franchise agreement. We would hope that, given the short amount of time we've had to try to work this issue out, that rather than go down this very extreme recommendation path, that you would give us a little more time to try to work this out in some way that would work for both the Commission and the company. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Roger. Nilo?
Karen, getting back to my questions about the form versus substance, whether that's relevant to the question or not, and just the ability to make a broad interpretation of revenue, whichever is the case, still the problem arises, it seems to me, in the first place, because you put on the bill to the advertising agent the full amount that includes the 15% commission, right?
I'm not sure about that. I actually have we have our controller with us today, and I might ask, I'd like to introduce Kim Nestor, if I may, and he can probably answer any of the technical questions.
All right, stay up there too, Karen, and then we'll...
Tim Nestor, Vice President Controller for the division.
Yeah. Is it your normal practice on an invoice, and I presume all advertising, the airtime for the advertising goes through the advertising agency, to be billed to and then paid for by the ultimate advertiser, but those bills include on them the amount of the commission that's due the advertising agency?
That's correct. It's an industry practice, advertising industry practice.
I understand, but we established you do.
Yep.
Why?
For the convenience of the client that initially bought the spot, rather than the client, Procter & Gamble, whoever it may be, have to pay the advertising agency directly for the 15% commission and then us for the placement of the spot. It's a courtesy that has just occurred over the life of the industry, and it's just kind of tradition in the industry.
Do you experience situations where an advertising agency, because of an arrangement with an advertiser, requests that you modify that commission amount that's billed?
That the advertiser?
In other words, let's say that the advertiser says to the advertising agency, I ain't going to pay you 15%. I'll pay you 5%. So I know there are cases like that, but the question is, do you experience that phenomena by virtue of the advertising agency requesting that you not put 15% on the bill, but only put 5% on the bill?
We would bill whatever the contractual relationship is between the client and the advertising agency.
Do you, in fact, do that?
Yes. I mean, there are one-off cases, of course, where it's not a 15% commissioner fee.
Right. And your invoice will reflect that arrangement between the agency and the advertiser.
That's correct.
And you do that at the direction of the agency, but supported by a contract between the agency and the advertiser.
That's correct.
Correct? Okay.
Could I just ask one further question? Now, so what you just said, as a courtesy, I think is what you said. So if I wanted to buy an ad on your station, I would send you the $100, and then you would send the advertising agency that got me to advertise there a $15 check. Is that correct?
No, it's a bit convoluted, but the way it works is we issue an invoice that includes both the amount of our revenues plus the fee to the agency. The agency then passes that invoice on to the client. The client pays the agency 100%, the fee and the amount that we would receive for placing the spot, and the agency then turns around and hands us the 85%, the amount that we would receive for running the spot.
So literally, you send them a check, and then they send you another check back?
No, we send them the invoice.
The invoice only, but not the check?
That's right. The advertiser pays the agency for the entire amount.
Okay.
So just to make it clear, we're not paying the commissions on these. It is the client that pays the commission to the advertising agency. The agency then forwards the gross amount to us from our perspective. Might I just add one more thing that I failed to mention before? The very broad definition of gross revenues that Mr. Espasto just conveyed would, in that definition, require that we pay franchise fees on cable modem service and telephony, which I think we all know has been decided otherwise. There are lots of things that go on in a community by virtue of the fact that the cable system is here, over which we really have not a lot of control or purview. So, and then there are these issues or these kinds of products and so forth that we are not required to pay franchise fees to local authorities because they're defined as something other than cable service.
Can I have one? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Karen, you would agree with the staff's characterization that this is an issue not just in this time and this place?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And you suggested some additional time to try to come to some mutually satisfactory negotiated conclusion. In light of the fact that it's obviously an issue in other places as well from time to time, does it not make sense to get, and I assume you have a strong conviction in your position with reason. I assume that our staff has strong conviction in its position.
Well, they have 50-50 conviction. I've got much more than that.
Well, those are odds they thought of winning, not the conviction in their reasoning. But,
no.
This is obviously complex. It requires construing the applicability of the franchise language, statutory language, to some extent case law, and of course in an interesting factual setting. Does it not make sense, however we do this, to get to a third-party fact finder and decision maker that, or advisor that can tell at least this commission what that third party thinks about this?
Yes.
I don't mean necessarily litigation. I mean
Sure.
whether it's a form of arbitration or mediation or something, but a third party.
I would agree, absolutely. I think the part that I do take issue with is however we get there. I would hate for the commission, excuse me, to have to find us in default in order to go there. I think that there must be a process whereby we can agree to go to some arbitration that settles this dispute for us without having to, start termination proceedings or call us in default or any of those things, because of course we clearly believe we're not.
Well, if I could...
Can I just follow up
Sure.
on this?
I'm sorry, Rodney. I was just pointing.
I thought I heard Harriet say that earlier that with mutual agreement we could go to a third party without an adoption of a finding of material breach. They had suggested you put the disputed amount in escrow and then do it, and I gather the resistance was to putting into escrow an amount of money that, rounding up, starts approaching $500,000. Are you in a position today to agree to enter into some sort of third-party decision-making on some set of foundation?
I would be happy. I think my first alternative would be to ask you to give us a little more time to talk it through, see if we can't get to some agreement on how to move forward. But barring that, I would certainly be willing to go to a third party who has the, the wherewithal to decide this decision. Absolutely.
And is there any amount that to you it makes sense to place in escrow in consideration of the controversy, or is that just a...
May I explain our position on that?
Of course.
First of all, the way that the documents are written, once we place money into escrow, we can't get it back. Even if we're found to be 100% correct, that money stays in escrow and is paid out over time, over a period of time, as future franchise fees. Not in big hunks where we get it done in a year or two. It is pieced out, percentages out over a period of time.
But that's if we follow our franchise procedure. I mean, if we have something that's mutually agreed upon, we could agree to give it back to you.
That may be possible. If there's some way that we can work outside of the parameters that I've been looking at and I see, then I think, certainly we're open to anything that we can do to work with the commission to get to resolution on this.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Just to follow up there, I don't think it's the intent of this commission at all to take any harsh action to try and close you down or anything. We're not here to do that. All we're trying to do is what our staff tells us they feel, and again, it's up to interpretation, they feel is owed to us. And if it's 300, at least the rounded off figure I heard was $380,000 short of the check you gave us today, then I agree with Mr. Dickinson that I think it should be just to show good faith. It should be put into some kind of an escrow account tomorrow, in my opinion. And as we said, we could certainly, it wouldn't be piecemealed back to me. Is that correct? We could handle it. This commission to give, if in fact they are correct, they could get their whole $380,000 back immediately. Is that correct?
I think that would be fine. The section that Ms. Monroe is talking about is the section in the franchise ordinance, which I do not believe actually applies anymore because of the settlement agreements. So if it's the desire of the commission and Comcast to have it, to put the money into escrow and then to pay it out upon a decision, however that decision comes out, I believe you and Comcast can agree to that.
Okay, I just have one more question. I'm not sure who can answer this, but in all the other cities in the United States that you do business with, have you had this dispute before on what is gross or what you pay?
This is a relatively new issue that's popping up during audits, and frankly, we have had a couple of instances where we have actually sat down with the communities and resolved them. I don't know of any that have actually gone through a judicial process. But there are some communities where it's not an issue at all, and then there are a few others where it is.
So it would depend on how the franchise fee is in the memorandum of understanding or in our contract with Comcast, correct?
Yeah, I think it's...
In this city is what we're talking about.
In this particular case,
so you may pay it or may not pay it somewhere else, correct? Because it wouldn't be the same type of agreement. Okay. Mr. Yee?
Well, I certainly agree with some of the comments mentioned earlier. Hey, this is not something that we on the commission is going to terminate your agreement with us. We recognize it as a disagreement as far as interpretation of essentially what gross revenue is. And I certainly would support some action between yourself and our staff to try to work this thing out. And if that doesn't, then we'll proceed on to a third party. Now, that's where I stand.
Ms. Sheedy?
Well, for my first meeting, I don't want to terminate anybody. But when I first looked at this and I saw material breach, I thought that's just a little bit harsh for the first step. I really go along with what the other commissioners have said. More time, if that can work it out, so be it. If not, then we move on to an arbitrator. Now, as I understand it, the hearing officer's decision comes back here if we use a hearing officer. Yep. What if we use an arbitrator? Are they two different? One's okay.
The question, I think, for the commission would be, do you want to go forward and, with a hearing officer who makes a recommendation back to this commission where you are the final decision maker, or do you want to hire an arbitrator who makes a final decision to which you are bound?
Right. I've heard both words today. That's why I was asking which was the preference. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Let's see, we got any other questions, Andy, Jeff? Okay. Well, I have one more question. Karen, please. I guess this maybe is a question to all the commissioners and yourself. I hear you asking for more time to try and resolve this issue, which is fine. I think I heard you agree to, if we can't get this resolved in a short amount of time, and I would say, in my opinion, a short time would be 2 weeks from today, we have a resolution on this matter, or we go to a hearing officer. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, if I could just confirm
Certainly.
with my, is 2 weeks enough time to try to work this through?
I certainly think 2 weeks is enough, but I guess my question would be, to get to a hearing officer, do you have to find us in material breach?
No, not if
No, not at all.
if you voluntarily agree.
No, if you agree to it, and that's what I'm trying to get on the record, that if you I just don't want to leave it open-ended. I want to say 2 weeks from today, or close to 15 days, whatever date that works out to be, that we will have an agreement, and if in fact we're right, we'll have our other $380,000, and then, I'm just kind of neutral on the, you're not going anywhere, so I'm kind of neutral on the escrowing the money. It doesn't really matter to me.
Well, trust me, if we owe it, well, we will pay.
Well, and that's why I'm not
yeah.
putting you in, asking the commission to put you in a position where we think you got to pay the first month's rent here in this apartment because you're going to leave us. So that's not going to happen, okay?
Okay,
so
thank you.
That's agreement. Staff, do you have any comments on that?
If it gets us to a resolution, and it sounds like it will, that's terrific.
Good. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to be entirely clear on what we're doing here, because I think that's important for all of us to understand. So the proposal here is that on or before April 15th, there will either be a mutual agreement as to resolution of this issue between the staff and Comcast, or in the event that there is not, there is an agreement that between the parties today to proceed to have the matter referred to a hearing officer. Is that what you're describing?
That's what I was trying to say.
And
with no escrow.
With no amount posted in escrow.
I guess my only concern is the term hearing officer. I don't know whether it's, I was thinking arbitration, a panel of 3 arbitrators where we choose one, you choose one, and then the 2 choose the third. Typically, that's a good
make a
panel.
binding determination?
arbitration?
I mean, a binding determination, Karen, or simply...
just regular arbitration, is that what we're looking at?
We don't want anything binding.
The reason I used hearing officer was, at least in my thinking, the hearing officer would make factual determinations and legal conclusions, but it would be advisory to the commission as opposed to binding on the parties.
Okay, so they would be advising you, and then we would seek our own advice.
Well, I mean, then it comes back to us, and,
to determine where to go.
We either agree with it or disagree with it. You'd certainly have a full and complete opportunity to express your views at that point in time.
Okay.
Could I suggest, maybe since, I don't think we need to hustle, this 2-week thing, I'm comfortable 2 weeks or a month. Seeing that we meet next month, do we? Or are we, is it one of those, when's our next meeting?
Our regular meeting date is impacted by changes with the board of the city. So we have a tentative date, I believe you said the 17th?
Yes, May 17th.
Be in the morning.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would be comfortable just giving, the time between now and that next meeting to come to some resolution, and then absent that, to have recommendation from, you can sort your thoughts, the staff can sort their thoughts on, whether it's a hearing officer, binding arbitration, or anything like that. I'm comfortable with the, but again, I'd make that as a...
Yeah, I just believe with this large amount of money, $380,000 out there, that they've had 17, 18 days, as you talked about, and I think we have to put some kind of a finite date on this, whether it be the 17th or the 20th, but I don't think we should wait till our next meeting and then...
Was there interest accruing?
There is interest accruing right now. If they were to make a deposit, the interest would stop accruing. If we're going to start to work something out, and not being pessimistic, but if we are then going to work out a procedure to go forward to have a third party look at this, and we're going to bring back that type of information to the commission. I would want some direction from the commission, if possible, on whether you're more inclined to go through a hearing officer process that goes back to the commission, or you're more inclined to go through a binding arbitration process that's binding on the commission. Because I think in having these discussions, that's a real fork in the road, and it would be really important to me to have some direction from the commission on your thoughts on that matter, because how we would go forward to try to structure a process would be very different.
I agree. If I may, I was just going to say, I think the hearing officer approach is better.
Concur.
Definitely.
It reserves to us the ultimate opportunity to determine the issue short of the courts, and it gives Comcast an additional opportunity to make its case if for some reason it disagrees with the hearing officer's advice. I think in this instance that's a better approach than giving a third party a binding role to play.
Because what I've been hearing is there's one issue here, and that's gross versus it isn't gross. And if that can be decided by a hearing officer, who's an attorney, I think you said, and all the legal case law looked up and then brought back to us, but I, for one, am not willing to give up our authority here to binding arbitration.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Okay, anybody disagree with that?
Nope.
No, I think that's the way to go. Okay, so now, any more questions?
One
Yes.
quick question. Harriet, is 2 weeks a sufficient amount of time to get a hearing officer on board and come to a decision?
We don't have any speakers, no.
If they don't come to the...
So can I paraphrase what I think the consensus of the commission is?
Give it a
because
stab.
I must admit I'm getting a little confused. And part of it is between the 2 weeks and the month and what may or may not come back to the commission on the 17th. One way to do this would be for your staff and Comcast to try to work out amicable arrangement in the next 2 weeks. If we cannot do that, we would then immediately go forward to select a hearing officer. If we can't reach agreement on a hearing officer, we would come back on the 17th and you would appoint a hearing officer to go forward.
We have a meeting on the 17th of...
The 17th of May.
Of May, okay.
At that point, that process would go forward. It would take several months.
Right.
Is that what you would like to do, or do you want us to? I mean, is that a process that would work for you?
What? Yes, I mean, from my standpoint, the only thing I'd say is you come back on the 17th of May without either an agreement or agreement to get to a hearing officer, we might determine something else. I mean, we're not going to, I don't think we should predetermine what we might choose among our options May 17th. So we'll leave a little mystery in this so you all will be energized to get it solved.
That's why I tried to put a deadline on it, but I don't understand the 17th is a Monday. We normally meet on Thursday. Is there a reason for that, Mr. Spaston?
Let Diane explain.
Yes, the Board of Supervisors has bumped everyone out of those chambers for 2 weeks for budget hearings.
Okay.
And that was the first available date we had.
That makes sense. Okay, so we'll be back here on the 17th then to...
The alternative is you can meet here during those 2 weeks, but you have to come up with $45 million.
Yeah.
We're trying to get $380,000 right now.
Well, that's a start.
Okay, so Susan, did you have any comments?
I think it was explained. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions?
Do you need a motion or?
A motion would be probably a good thing.
All right, I will move then that we direct staff to attempt to negotiate on a bilateral basis a resolution to this question with Comcast on or before April 15th, and in the absence of agreement that staff reach agreement with Comcast to proceed to have the matter heard by a hearing officer.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
We may have it.
Yeah.
Michael, did...
Want to make comment?
Okay, just
it says here,
have the matter heard by hearing officer.
Item 6.
thought you wanted to make a public comment.
Yeah.
You want to, you make 6, you want to make comments on, public comments and then comments on this issue too? Then come forth on this issue.
Okay, just to finish the,
Can we finish the resolution
motion on the table.
All right, the second motion.
And in the absence of agreement on having the matter heard by a hearing officer, the staff would return to the commission and so advise us on May 17th.
Second.
Okay, now we'll take testimony.
Thank you, Chair Waters. Member Sheedy, I respectfully disagree with you that this is, it's harsh to call this a material breach. I read the documents and it looks to me like a material breach. If it's to be contested, I think it should be paid and then contested later. I mean, if I contest the bill that I have with Comcast, I have to pay what they say they owe, that I owe, and then I have to contest it. The same is true of so many other things in our society. This is given a subsidy to a big corporation. It earns $160 million in our community and can't come up with $380,000. When we're asking everybody to sacrifice, somehow we can give a break, a big break, to a very big corporation. And I disagree. I think I've read the finance document, and it does show that there is a reluctance on the part of this corporation to pay its due. And it's already being paid. Actually, it's just a transfer payment. It comes from the people who pay for these services. So I respectfully disagree, Member Sheedy, and I think that this board should, or this commission should require Comcast to pay the $380,000 now and then proceed with Member Dickinson's recommendation. Thank you.
But we are getting interest on that money, correct, even though we haven't collected it? I mean, while we haven't collected it.
Interest would continue to accrue.
As long as we didn't put it into escrow. Okay.
How much is the interest?
Okay. Let's do a voice vote on this, please.
Okay. Yee,
Yes.
Dickinson,
Aye.
Peters,
Yes.
Cullen, Nilo, Slowey,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Sheedy,
Aye.
Leary, Natoli, Waters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Yeah, it'll go. Okay. Item number 3, Madam Clerk.
Item number 3 is elect chairperson, vice chairperson.
Okay. Mr. Spasta?
Mr. Chairman, your bylaws say that you will elect a chair each quarter. There is no established process on how you do that. I'm sorry to say there are times in the past when the chair happened to be the member who wasn't here. With that, I'll put it back to the board on what you would like to do.
Okay, well, Mr. Yee, do you have, go ahead, Mr. Yee.
Mr. Chair, apparently the president or chairman-elect is Mr. Donatoli for this coming year. Is that what it is?
There is not a formal process in your bylaws. Mr. Natoli is and has been the vice chair, but you have not had a consistent pattern. Your bylaws say you must elect a chair every first quarter.
But he's the heir apparent.
That's the way we've been doing it, yeah.
Yes.
Apparently, Mr. Natoli's schedule is quite busy from what I understand, and it would be a little bit too much of a burden for him to step up to the chairmanship. And so with that in mind, Mr. Chair, I would like to recommend to this board that you, as the current chair, be nominated for another term, and Mr. Natoli be nominated for another term as vice chair.
Second.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of you. It's a blessing or not, but there are some...
Don't thank us yet. We haven't voted yet.
Well, I'm trying to lobby illegally here with Harriet sitting there. But if I could just say something before we vote. There's some unresolved issues, as we all know, and there was last year when I agreed to stay one more year. So I think that with the background and working with Mr. Espasto and Harriet on these things, I would accept if there's a unanimous vote.
Yeah, just don't get a fat head.
I won't. Or a paycheck either. Okay. Go ahead. Let's do a voice vote to see where everybody is.
Brave.
Robbie wants
Yee.
to single them out.
Aye.
Dickinson,
Abstain? You abstain?
Aye.
Peters,
Aye.
Cullen, Nilo,
Okay.
Slowey,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Sheedy,
Aye.
Leary, Natoli, Waters.
Aye. Thank you very much to all of you.
Congratulations.
got a good staff to work with, so they make it a lot easier. Okay, number 4, please.
We have channel licensee grantee status presentations. And we have a few.
Okay, I got Ron, you wanted to speak on this matter. Why don't you come up now and we'll see if there's any other speakers for number 4. Okay, name on the record, please, Ron.
Ron Cooper, Executive Director, Access Sacramento. And as you've already heard, the cost cutting continues. Over the last 8 months or so, there have been dramatic cutbacks in terms of staffing and service. Our Finance Committee reports that we still have a burn rate of about $1,500 to $3,000 a month too much. We have looked at various ways in terms of generating additional revenue so that we stay solvent, and have come up with the strategy of requiring a membership fee that's higher than our regular membership fee for those who request regular series time slots on an ongoing basis. Not always, but in the majority of cases, are connected to organizations of some kind, faith-based organizations, related in some ways to other revenue-generating activities in the community, short of commercial messages, but that they have resources that they can go to. With your decision to permit PBS-style 30-second underwriting acknowledgments on the channels, what we're proposing, and that's what this document is, we just want to bring it to your attention, we're proposing to set up a different membership rate scale for those who choose to have a regular series time slot. Ask those providers, those program providers, to go to their own resources, and if this is burdensome in some way financially to them, the revenue generated is projected to be somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a year, which would make us solvent given the current burn rate without dipping into further core services. So we're bringing this to your attention. There's a public hearing next Friday and a final decision at the board meeting on April 15th. If you get calls, you've been informed in terms of the direction that we're going in. We're trying to be fair and equitable. And in the spirit of revenue generation, a little notice there about our Cinemagic fundraiser at the Guild Theater. That'll be on April 18th from 2 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. There'll be entertainment. There'll be a raffle. There was an auction of some wonderful art pieces, and we would invite and encourage everyone to come and participate, and it should be a lot of fun. And we appreciate the St. Hope Foundation and the Guild Theater for their participation in our fundraising event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Next speaker is Pastor Isaac Holloman.
The words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. I come here, first of all, I want to give my name, and but first of all, to acknowledge...
Yeah, butchered your name. I apologize if I did.
Pastor Isaac Holloman. But to the chairman of the board, Mr. Robbie Waters, to the rest of the members of the cable board, I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And that's to you, and to everybody that's here, because in Him is why I'm here. And one other thing is I have a love for mankind. I see too little of that anymore in this world. Too much is coming down that I'm beginning to tremble at some of the things that I'm seeing. And I know that somebody up there must be feeling the way that I feel. But this, I didn't come to talk about that. I come to talk on the regards of, I think, item 4. And I have to get my information not from the intellectual sources as you all have it. So you bear with me, because Furthermore, I'm country. And usually a country person, he say what he mean and he mean what he say. But we're not so eloquent, not so understanding. Sometimes you just don't understand where we're coming from. But I have to glean mine from different sources. And in this case here, it's like the bee. I get a little information from there and then tidbits from sometime when I'm sitting at a restaurant or something, I might hear things and they don't know that I'm concerned about this. But I'm concerned about the things that have been happening in regards to the management of things that have happened. That it seems to me like there's something wrong in River City, if I might put it that way. I read here where we read that in Sacramento v. By Clint Sweat and Elizabeth Holmes, I hope I got it right. Sacramento cable television regulators are threatening to pull Comcast's license to serve Sacramento County unless the cable giant agrees to pay nearly $800 in back franchise fees. And then it goes on to say the figure come after an audit that found Comcast and its predecessors, AT&T Broadband, underreported revenues during a 4-year period in 2002. The revenue is used to determine the annual franchise fee. And then I read further on where we see the commission collected a yearly franchise fee from its license based on revenue the cable companies generates over the past 4 years. Comcast and AT&T Broadband paid about $25 million in franchise fee. As Pasto, excuse me, sir, if I missed your name, said, but the audit found that Comcast and before that AT&T Broadband underpaid by about 4% because it didn't include the subscribers at what is now the former McCullough Air Force Base. It didn't include the report at advertising revenue generation from the subscribers in Galt, Citrus Heights, Folsom before 2002. It underpaid on commission from shopping channel sales, and it didn't pay on national advertising revenue. And based on that, they're saying that there was, I guess, a shortage of something. But my understanding that has been found to be there.
Okay, I don't know when you came into this hearing, Pastor, but we've already been through that entire matter, and it's if you were here, that is in the process of being negotiated right now. So we are well aware of it, and we spent about 2 hours on it this afternoon, and
I got caught up in an accident back in the road back there, so
No, that's fine. I'm just saying that. Yeah. I'm just bringing your attention that everything you're telling us we just heard for the last 2 hours. So do you have anything else? Before I ask you to close, because you've had your 3 minutes.
I've already had my 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'd like a little more.
Well, I have some other things to say, but I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to.
You're welcome to come back next month, then, sir.
I don't want to, and you know.
Like May.
Yeah.
17th. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I haven't offended anybody.
You did not offend anybody. You're welcome to come back anytime you'd like, Pastor. Okay, we got one more speaker on item 4. Mike Manoski. He's got one.
I'd like to bring your attention to a document that was given to you by the Executive Director of Access. I'm assuming this is the document he gave you regarding the increase in membership rates. Is that the document he gave you? Yes. On the first page, dated March 18th, it says, on a bold section, it says, charge a fee to play back any and all programs. It says here, I'm quoting, "The Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission historically discourages charging for public access channel time." And then there's a chart on another page on the opposite side of a public meeting, and which shows the cost of 60 minutes of a 60-minute show for a person who produces a 1-hour show every week for 52 weeks is $7.21. What is being proposed by Access TV is a fee for service, and I believe is illegal, and I'd like to bring it to your attention because it's supposed to be presented as a proposal, but I kind of doubt it's going to be a proposal. I think it's already a done deal by the board, by the Sacramento Community Cable Foundation, which runs Access TV. It says that there's a public meeting a week from tomorrow, Friday, April 9th, to introduce an increase in membership fees, which is different than a proposal. If you're introducing the fees, it sounds like you've already chosen, already decided to have the fees increased. And the show that I do is once a week, and he would suggest, Mr. Cooper and the board suggests a $375 fee to be able to present the show, and it's a show that I'm not paid for, that I have to scrape money together to get equipment to work, and I would use the $375 toward a tripod that actually held still, and I wouldn't give it to this board or to Access TV because it's something that's needed and not available. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and hope that when you consider funding Access TV, that you take into consideration that this is essentially being a fee-for-service proposition that's being presented next Friday. Thank you.
Fine. Are you going to speak on item 6 too? I mean, just why don't you sit down front because the hour's getting late. Item number 5, please.
We have franchisee, licensee, general status presentations. We have one
Robin
speaker.
Price.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Robin Price, and I'm the Marketing Director for Strategic Technologies. And the reason why I'm here today is just to give you an update about a topic that's been of concern to many, many people. What I'm referring to is the PEG channels. We're finally at a point where within the next 60 to 90 days, we should be able to go ahead and launch those. The interconnect agreement has been signed, and we'd like to thank Comcast for being so cooperative in helping us to locate the intertie. And that's it. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you very much, Rob. Yeah. Item 6, please.
We have public opportunity to discuss matters not on this agenda.
And Michael Onoski.
Well, this has been a somber group today, and you know what today is, right? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
April 1st. You do know it's April 1st, don't you? Anybody else know that it's April 1st? So I'm going to read 10 reasons why the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission should kill community access TV. Number 10, free speech. Free speech? We don't need no stinking free speech. Number 9, God bless ambition. All hail wealth, power, and fame, or as they say on Channel 19, for thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, now and forever, amen. Number 8, Benjamin, I have one word for you. Advertising. Number 7, let them eat C-SPAN. Number 6, sorry, but we've been ordered by Homeland Security to push the peace and social justice movements even further underground. Number 5, not enough sexual violence and not enough violent sex. Number 4, it's free. It's free? Isn't that illegal? Number 3, it's a lousy source of campaign contributions. Number 2, nobody will miss this unseen suicidal teenager, stupid, ugly, and unloved. And, if I could get a drum roll, please, anyone? The number 1 reason why Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission should just pull the plug on community access TV. Nobody watches it, but nobody rides the bus either. hey, wait, while we're at it, why not dump public transit too? Happy April Fools, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the board? If not, we're adjourned.